Oh, baby. The Cubs are back.
Yeah.
Steve Trout is not back. He's
Steve Trout's old. He better not be back. You talking about Mike Trout? Or are you talking
Mike
about
Trout.
the old Cubs pitcher? You know, either way.
No, Steve Trout.
Mike Trout hit about as well as Steve Trout this weekend.
I know. That's what I'm saying. No, remember, did Steve Trout, did he get a no-hitter? Did he have a no-hitter?
I don't think so.
Or did he come really, really close to a no-hitter? I remember it was a night game and he was pitching. I think he actually had a no-hitter going. And I think he lost it like really late.
He's not as salty about it as Pappas was. Milt Pappas went to his grave complaining about the umpire's call that cost him a no back in the day, which I remember really. He was super salty about that. But speaking of which, though, what's funny is we went. That's one of those weird situations, right? Because it's like a hole in one in golf or whatever. You got guys who PGA Tour players. I don't know if I've ever a cousin of mine who's really my mom's cousin, or whatever, but he played on the tour. Not enough to stick around, but two years I think he spent on the PGA Tour. Never in his life had a hole in one, and then we retired from the tour 10 years afterwards. He had 2 in a week, which leads me to the whole thing about the Cubs. Right, they went from was 74 or whatever was their last, and then all of a sudden it's okay, you get Zambrano gets one, and then Jake Arrieta throws a couple, and then freaking who am I thinking? Friend of the show, Alec Mills gets a no-hitter, and then they get a combined no-hitter, and it's whoa, hey, this is pretty cool. You don't get one for 40 years, and then you just rattle off 6 of them. Okay.
You mentioned Alec Mills. My goodness. He's just kind of fallen off the radar. Kind of unbelievable that he got one. I remember when he did it. That was
the season
where'd he go?
After that was 21, right?
It was after COVID.
He had a stress fracture in his back or something, because the Cubs parted ways with him, and I know he signed somewhere. I thought somewhere on was it the Giants or the A's or somebody West Coast. Anyway, then I don't know if he's officially retired, but I'm pretty sure he's hung him up. But
good guy though. He was a good guy.
Yeah, super good dude. That was our first baby appearance on the Rant of the two. We had two babies on the show, so good times.
Cool. No, Mike Trout, honestly, to be serious about the situation was really bad, and what did he strike out 7 times?
It was at least 6 in the last 2 games alone, right? Horton struck him out 3 times, and then I think he struck out 3 times yesterday. It was just ugh. There used to be a time when you're okay, this is the guy you don't pitch to, and now you're watching this dude, buddy, you were, and his strikeout rate's over 30% or something this season, so it's not it's just the Cubs, but they've always done well against him for whatever reason. They've always played very well in Anaheim. They always draw very well out there. So you talk about a game with Cubs fans being excited. Think about Kyle Hendricks yesterday pitching in front of a crowd that was entirely favorable to him on both sides, mostly Cubs fans. And they were cheering for him. You know what I mean? That's such an odd.
He's this is new.
Yeah, he's the one guy for that team that everybody's cheering for. It's a Cubs. It's definitely a pro, and it's always every game I've ever been to there. And I'm talking back in, I think it was 2012, something like that. So again, the height of they had Josh Hamilton. They had, Trout was doing really well, and the Cubs were awful, as we know. But it was still mostly Cubs fans in Anaheim, at least 50-50, and I would say even more so. And then certainly in 2016, for the first 2 games of the season, again, vast majority of Cubs, to the point that you could walk into a bar in Anaheim, and I did this, and know multiple people in this bar from Twitter and whatever, but it was just this is just surreal. Not as surreal as running into people I knew in London, but still surreal. Anyway.
Yeah, those were definitely the days. So let's talk about what's happening here with the Cubs. Kind of giving us hope again, as the Cubs so often do. And the Brewers. So what was it? on the 14th, which was about 11 days ago, we had our last rant, our last podcast. And, I said that the Brewers weren't going to win 120 games. Now, I do realize, I want to state that I realize that mathematically they couldn't have won 120 games. They could have only won 118 if they went out at that point. But I guess my point really was that they're overrated. The Brewers are overrated. And when I say overrated, I guess I have to, qualify that statement, because I'm not sure there's a lot of people at the beginning of the season who were rating them very high, and definitely in the middle of the season, they weren't rating them very high. And then they went on a 10-game win streak and then a 14-game win streak. But since the 14th, they're 5-6, and they've dropped 3 of 5 to the Cubs, and they dropped 2 of 3 to the Giants just over the weekend. So they're 5-6, and the Cubs are now 5 games back. Which I still shake my head at, because they shouldn't even be that far. The fact that they've gotten 5 games back, and you want to feel like there's some life there. And I mean, really kind of like, I'm looking at the Brewers schedule and I'm just thinking, let's see, they have 4 against the D-backs at home. And this is a trap series for the Brewers, because if they don't perform very well, meaning sweep or at least win 3 out of 4 against the Diamondbacks, they're facing Toronto at Toronto and then Philadelphia for 3. And so, let's say they split or even lose this series to the Diamondbacks, they've got 6 games against very good teams coming up, and the Cubs could very well catch them in short order. So, with the Cubs schedule coming up is against, let's see, of course, the Giants, who just took 2 out of 3 from the Brewers, the Rockies, the Braves, Washington, Atlanta. I mean, Tampa, their schedule, Tampa, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, the Mets. I'm loving the Cubs schedule coming down the stretch. What are you thinking here?
Yeah, I mean, well, and think about it, right? So you talk about what the Cubs did against the Brewers, and after that first game last Monday, the Cubs dropped it 7-0. Looked like crap. The Brewers had a 9-game lead at this point. Here we sit a week later, and it's only a 5-game lead, right? So the Cubs only shaved. And this what's hilarious, right? Because you mentioned that, and at the time when you said they're not going to win 120 games, whatever, and I was like, all right, I specifically said on there, we need to have Blake actually clip this, and he did, and that went out there as a reel, and very much caught the eye of a number of Brewers fans out there. And the best part about that, right? Because here's the thing, is like, I am not one to proactively talk shit, unless it's like all in good fun, right? Like, I'm not just throwing stuff out there. And I say this for a couple different reasons. As I've raised my kids not to do, and especially, and you may experience it. I don't know if it hits that hard at your level of youth ball yet, but definitely once you get up to like 14, 15, 16, these kids chirp. So my son's last game of the season, I promise I'll get back to the point, but it makes sense here. His last game of the season on the mound. So he goes out there and he's just dealing immediately. It looked like Cade Horton, like just pumping strikes. These guys are from the other side, are like, and like Ryan's a grunter when he throws, right? So the other kids are kind of making fun of him grunting. They're running their mouths, talking to their pitchers, throwing one by our guys, swing miss, like, bye you. And they're talking all this. Mind you, my kid went out and threw a 7-inning, it's only 7-inning games, right? But he threw a complete game on 72 pitches, nice. Allowed one hit, and they scored 1 run because the kid walked, and then our catcher let 2 pass balls go by, and the kid scored on a sac fly. But anyway, they're running their mouths. The other team, the whole time, like, you are getting 1 hit. You have 0, but like nobody. It's the idea of, and I think this comes from, this is where I get back around to, I think it comes from the anonymity of online interaction, right? Because these Brewers fans come out, you guys will be lucky to win 2 games. There's no chance you'll win 3. Oh, you suck. And there's somebody who's like, hey, well, the Cubs won the season series now. And so they didn't win the season series, it's tied. It's like, my dude, this guy called me a bozo. And I'm like, all right, brain genius. 7-6 in the season. He's like, well, I thought it was 6-6, but we're all just baseball fans. Calm down. But it was just so funny to have them latch onto this and attack on it. And granted, their team is up, but it was all like this: "You guys suck. You're not going to win any games." And then the Cubs do win games. Like, well, look at standings. Okay, like, stop moving the goalposts. Don't be a douchebag. Like, let your team do its business, and then you can talk afterwards. But when you run your mouth up front, you put yourself in a position to look like a giant dumbass if things don't come through the way you want.
And that's why I was saying that I like the situation. I'm not averse to where the Cubs were just a week ago before that series, because the Cubs have melted down in September, and we've experienced that before. And the Brewers have come on in September. And the fact that the Brewers were coming on kind of July, August, and the Cubs were kind of, fading a little, but they were still there. They're still right in good position, right? Leading the wild card. I kind of felt like we're in a situation that could kind of flip the script here and see Milwaukee meltdown.
Especially if the Cubs get some performances. Now, granted, they sandwiched that offensive explosion in between two games where they just barely did enough to get by against pitchers
against the Angels,
who should not have given them much trouble. But it's still, they certainly were taking advantage. We saw that in the middle game, the Saturday night game. Obviously jumped all over everybody. Seeing Kyle Tucker jump out, that was huge. And I kind of, what's bothersome to me, well, we can get to that, and I wrote about it earlier with now how what Seiya Suzuki's doing, but I think the key to it here is it does feel like the Cubs were playing so much worse than they ever should have, with everybody kind of just not stepping it up, but the pitching has continued to be really, really strong. And if the offense just finds some semblance, right? And so instead of having five guys slumping at once, all of a sudden, hey, if Tucker's back, if Seiya Suzuki can figure things out, if Hap kind of gets back on, and Hap's actually been better in August than he was, like a lot better in August than he was in July. But you got Matt Shaw really catching it and figuring it out. Pete Crow Armstrong's got a long way to go to get back to even close to where he was. But I feel like, kind of when you look at it, say, they're 9 games back. Well, that takes the pressure off them. And you look at it and say, these guys can't all continue to be this bad. They're too good to continue to hit like this. That gives me a lot of faith in what happens here over the next few weeks of the season. I think, like, 5 games, you'd rather have seen them within 5 games a week ago or a few days ago, but that's not nearly, like, to go from 9 to 5. They cut 4 games off the lead in a week. What if they shave another 2 off this week and now you're a 3? Like, that can change in a hurry. So I don't feel great about the Cubs being able to come all the way back and actually win the division. But in addition to getting close to the Brewers, they have also significantly distanced themselves from the Reds, who are hanging outside in that top, out just outside the wild card. I think it's a 7 or 8 games the Cubs are up now on the Reds. So that gives me a really good feeling. And I think with that comes that security. Like, you start getting a little tight if you're way out of first. And that was the issue with the Cubs. They were losing ground rapidly. They lost the series to the Reds, lost out there. Now, if you balloon that and say, hey, we feel great, we're going to make the playoffs. Now, hey, maybe we can make some noise and clamber back up into first. So I think they're playing a little looser, getting away from Wrigley for a while. I think this will do them really well on what should be an advantageous road trip. So yeah, I mean, entering September, looking like they're playing good baseball is huge.
Yeah, exactly. And it just felt like, to your point about the Brewers fans and Facebook and how they love to interact with us. And it was funny because that clip that we posted, you look at the comments, it's almost all Brewers fans. And it's like, wow, you guys pay a lot of attention to a Cubs blog for being Brewers fans. And it feels like they were celebrating before the race is over, right? I mean, like, you're 3/4 of the way through, buddy. You still got a long way to go. And as Cubs fans, we know, because we've seen some September meltdowns against the Brewers.
They're spiking the ball on the 1 yard line. You know what I mean? It's like
they're the guy who's like he's celebrating before he gets, and he drops the ball, like,
drops
right
it
before the goal line.
It's like, not the
like,
bit. And the thing is, like, this is not an organization that's got a great history of playoff success either, right? So it's like there's the idea of just get in. Well, they've just gotten in many times of late. They have been, again, and admittedly, like we've written, and that's what's funny, right? Is we've been, I feel very, very clear about this, mostly because it's factual and there's no reason to sugarcoat it. Over the last 5 years or so, the Brewers have significantly outperformed the Cubs in the regular season and the postseason too, since they've actually been there, I guess. But that's, if you don't do anything once you make it to October, then what could you could, like, hey, the Braves got their one World Series back in the day, but like when you win the division, you win the pennant like 13 years in a row, not the pennant, but in their case, the division, and you only get one World Series. I understand that that's still a big deal. Not all teams can do that all the time, and certainly the Brewers can't, because the Brewers never won the World Series. But that's the funny thing to me is, like, act like you've been there. Well, Brewers fans have never been there, so they don't know how to act. So I understand it, but
True.
I do appreciate the fact that they're obnoxious. They've found our content. They're in our comments, because guess what? Our Facebook is monetized, and you Brewers fans coming and yelling at us, hey, you get nothing for it. We win, right? That's how we're paying for the private jets, right? We were able to upgrade. I think we went from a G5 to a G6 just based on Brewers fans bitching at us about how dumb we were. So
Flying
joke's on
all
you,
over
buddy.
the continent.
You just gave me we're a few comments away from a free helicopter. So,
speaking of the vast success of the Milwaukee Brewers in the postseason, any concerns about Craig Counsell as kind of the leader of the Cubs as they look like they're heading to the postseason?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, and so
I mean, like, what do you do about it, right?
I mean, I wrote about this earlier, like, and part of it was sort of a thought exercise. Like, is this dude on the hot seat? And this was at the time. And again, I think I qualified it. And this is a tough part about media literacy, right? Is that people will see a headline and then assume a bunch of things and not get into it. And I'm not saying he is on the hot seat, but when you look at some of what's happened, what's transpired, and not to say like, oh, the Brewers are good and they're better than the Cubs, and that's because he's not there, or whatever. But Pat Murphy was his bench coach his whole time in Milwaukee, except for, so Counsell was like a front office advisor before then he got hired on like in mid-May or whatever of his first year there in Milwaukee. And so he currently is the Brewers' all-time winningest manager. But I think other than like the 61 wins he got credit for in his first season there, again, as kind of the interim or fill-in guy, it wasn't interim because they signed him to a multi-year contract. But that following year, he brought on Pat Murphy, who was his coach in college at Notre Dame. And Murphy was right there as his right-hand man that whole time. And so there's a lot of reason to sit there and think, like, well, who was mostly responsible? And outside that first year, they had a losing record. Again, you don't put that too much on Counsell. He didn't have his own thing in place. And then 2020, they were a little bit below 500. Outside of that, they were well over 500. I think 86 was their fewest number of wins in all but those two seasons that he was there. And now you look at it, you say, well, certain things the Brewers are doing out of their minds, but I'm looking at stuff like, and again, the echo chamber, it's easy to kind of criticize, but like the handling of Kyle Tucker, the fact that Owen Casey came up and then was benched for a few games. And as soon as Tucker has come back, Casey's been benched again for multiple games in a row. Meanwhile, you've got Seiya Suzuki, who has had his worst month of the season in August. Suzuki is actually, and I wrote about this earlier, so you can go to CubsInsider.com, check this out. Suzuki's gotten worse every month of the year. Lower batting average every month. Lower WRC plus every month. He's typically hit righties just about as well as lefties, but he's doing really badly against righties right now. Wow. You've got a DH, right-handed hitter, struggling in general, struggling in particular against right-handed pitching. Looks like he's making bad decisions. Also a guy who we know had similar issues back in 2023. David Ross gave him a few games off. Like he sat for 4 games. He pinch hit in the middle of that against the Braves and Mets. Then came back, and after that little reset, had a 188 WRC plus the rest of the season, was the Cubs' best hitter by far, hit like 356. Why not, A, sit a guy who looks like he's stuck in his head, B, swap in your top prospect who has hit really well, who has 3 at-bats in the last 4 games, I think, pinch hit appearance, in which he doubled 114 miles an hour which is the Cubs' second hardest hit ball of the year. Look, why are we doing this? I promise I'll get around to even more of a point here. And part of what I tried to make in there was, we heard, there were some issues last year with Suzuki being moved to DH. And Craig Counsell admitted during spring training this year that there had been communication issues between the two of them, that he got a little bit lazy, whether that was, part of that's the translation thing. And I don't know if this is another situation where like Counsell is kind of being standoffish, if he's just afraid or unwilling to kind of have those hard decisions because he's had difficulty with it in the past. But it feels to me like, hey, here's a guy who's clearly struggling, who has been through this issue before and understands what it can be. And you've got this rookie who's just sitting there on the bench doing nothing. That strikes me as a situation where Counsell, who came into this, who admittedly is not a tactician as much as he's a relationship guy. He touted himself as such. That was how he introduced himself to Cubs fans, that I'm going to get to know all these players. I'm going to understand how they think, how they feel, how they're doing, and kind of base some decisions around that. Well, if that's the case, why the hell was Kyle Tucker, who for all the world looked like the most frustrated human being I've ever seen in my life, why are we not giving him a break instead of hanging him out to dry and get booed by his own fans at home? That's a different story. Fans shouldn't be doing that, but it was like you're setting him up as a target. I feel that's the same thing going on with Suzuki, that something from a communication standpoint, from a personality standpoint, is not meshing. That worries me because these are not the most important games. What worries me is Counsell going to be able to pull those strings and understand those people when it gets to the games that really, really matter. So I rambled a lot there. I hope I kind of made sense.
Yeah. No. I mean, I think that remains to be seen, right? So we've got to get, hopefully the Cubs will get into the postseason and we'll get a better feel for how Counsell manages once he gets there, because that's really the most important time of the year, obviously, is when you get to the postseason and the moves that you make and how you go about, playing your guys, and hopefully they're all ready, and locked in. And that's really, we still have a month, like a full month of games. And so a lot's going to happen over this month. And hopefully we'll have some of those questions answered before we get to the playoffs. One player I wanted to talk about that I'm not like overly concerned, but Daniel Palencia, right? Like he makes things really interesting, way more than a closer should. And boy, when he makes a mistake with that fastball, he's just right in the middle of the plate and it gets pounded. Yeah, even though he's throwing it at 100 miles an hour. Man, but there are times where he's so good, where he's nibbling the top of the zone or the bottom of the zone, or, and it was just not in the middle of the plate, really. And he really just looks really good. And then there are other times where it's just, and that's a closer, right? That's just, you see that from closers a lot. But like, I really worry about him being in a high pressure situation again if we start talking about the postseason and how he's going to handle that. And if he's not able to handle the pressure, who does Counsell turn to?
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Like, yeah, because who do you have left at this point? Like Porter Hodge isn't back yet and hasn't looked good when he's been, even when he was healthy. You've had to cycle through. I mean, we talked about this on our last show, like how many high leverage guys, because Palencia is the number 4 choice, right? Going into the season, it should have been either Ryan Presley or Porter Hodge or some combination. Julian Merriweather would have been there as kind of the third option, really. And now you're on your 4th, and he's done really well. I don't want to take that away. It's just, it's more like if the Cubs clearly didn't see him really rising into this role as quickly as he has. To me, where I get concerned, and part of this goes to the catcher as well, and kind of the communication there, because he gave up a hit on he hung a splitter, and there were a few times, which I thought was a curious call in that situation, where it's like, my dude, you've blown your fastball by this guy. Why are we going to slow it up? And granted, he wanted to bury the splitter, and it ended up middle. There were a few sliders that he cut loose, and to me, I thought were questionable times from it. And there is something to be said for kind of using some of this time in a game that's not entirely consequential. I mean, they all matter, right? But some more than others. to kind of go in there and feel this stuff out, because you don't know it works until you go out there and throw it. But yeah, if you're out there going 101, 102, just blow it by them. And if they beat you with that, great. But what I don't want to see is a closer. And this is what was tough, right? When Chapman when they rode that dude hard and put him up wet during that World Series run, it was like he had no gas left and just had to go slider, 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 slider. And it's like, well, you do that enough, eventually you're going to get tagged. Or it's like Dylan Maples, who had the nastiest stuff maybe we've ever seen. Realistically, couldn't command his fastball at all. And there'd be times where just like, yeah, I don't care how good your slider is. If you've thrown it 3 times and they know it's coming, they might guess on it. So that's the thing with Palencia, is like, if you're going to get beat with your best stuff. Like, don't give me this secondary or tertiary pitch. Tertiary means third for those folks out there who missed that.
Tertiary?
Something like that. Yeah, sure. Turd sanctuary. That's the part that bugs me, is then when those things aren't right. You know what I mean? It's like you lead with the fastball, let that dominate. And we did see him like that last batter. Then it was like, all right, you put it past this dude a couple times. Like, let's go. Like, so yeah, is it a little concerning? Sure. But I do also appreciate that when he's right, you know, I mean, Hodge has been really good in the past, whatever, but give me the closer that can blow it by dudes. And then other than Chapman, we haven't seen a guy like that on the north side in a long, long time. They've had a number of guys who are just like, yeah, get you out via contact, you know, and that's kind of how Hodge has been. So yeah, we'll see. But if it's not Palencia, I mean, it's got to be Brad Keller at this point. Like, he's the only other guy in that bullpen.
And you don't want him in that role, because you need him coming into the game in the 7th or 8th inning.
Right. He's and that's what's been so great about him, is he's that floating high leverage guy where it's like, hey, it's the 7th. We got this tough, you know, we got 2, 3, 4 hitters coming up. We're going to put Keller in there. You know, Andrew Kittredge has been good at times, but he's kind of hit or miss to me. Although I love watching that dude pitch, because he looks for all the world like some beer league softball guy, right? He's like mid to late 30s. He's got the big beard going. He's got that slow windup that looks like a position player pitching until he reaches that full stretch, and then it's just bam. And then you see him like 96, 97 with a wicked breaking ball. It's just funny to watch him. And when he's on, he's on. So, I mean, I like where the bullpen construction is at. It's just a matter of, can they, but here's the problem, right? So we talk about this. They just swept the Angels, but games 1 and 3, they had to do it clinging to a 1-run lead or keeping a tie game in there, which means using more high leverage guys more frequently to get those. I want to see the offense pick up so we can get some of these 4, 5, 6-run games late, to where you can let Jordan Wicks pitch 3 innings. You can let Ben Brown, like he did the other day in the blowout, pitch 3 innings late there in garbage time to kind of get their own confidence back and save the bullpen. That's what we need to see from them. And that I'll feel way, way better about the back end if they can rest them up for a while.
So I'm looking at the Cubs schedule right now. They have 23 games. Their next 23 games are against sub 500 teams. I mean, you couldn't draw it up better than that.
No, that's like getting to the end of the marathon and having it all be downhill, presumably. Now, the question is, are your legs so tired? Because as you've done a lot more distance running than I have. My distance running consists of making it around 60-foot bases on a softball field from first to third. I did triple last Monday, by the way. I almost died coming around second, but I made it. But so you know a little bit more about than I would. But as anybody knows, you know, when you are a little tired and you are kind of chugging toward the end, or even if you're just walking downhill and you happen to stumble, things can get pretty ugly in a hurry if you're going downhill. And so I don't want to take that for granted and say, well, hey, they're playing all these bad teams, but it should set up for them to do some of the things at the risk of getting too cute with being able to save some bullpen arms a little bit, conserve those, with being very careful about Cade Horton's usage. Just right before we jumped on, I just put something out about Cade Horton, who is now, as far as betting odds, he is the odds-on favorite to win NL Rookie of the Year right now. So he's taken over from Isaac Collins of the Brewers. Matt Shaw is actually in fourth. But I want to talk about that a little bit. I wrote about that because I don't know if you recall when I made fun of the Pirates for waiting until May 11th last year to call up Paul Skeens, who then went on to win Rookie of the Year and earn himself a full year of service time, despite them calling him up in almost mid-May.
But they didn't get the draft pick.
They didn't get the draft picks, but guess what? The Cubs called up Cade Horton on May 10th. He's still not eligible for PPI, and if he finishes top 2 in the Rookie of the Year, he gets a year of service time as well. So the Cubs will be in the same position. Now, it doesn't hurt them as bad as the Pirates because, as we all know, like the Pirates aren't paying for anybody. Like they need those cheap years more than anybody.
Well, yeah, and Skeens was different, right? Like the Cubs,
he should have been up.
They got injuries, right? I mean, like, with the Cubs,
Horton had to kind of prove it still. Yeah,
Imanaga got injured.
Not the odds-on favorite guy. It was a different deal. This is circumstantially, and I noted that in there. But it would be funny. The only thing is, if he does get his year of service time, right, that removes that extra cheap rookie year, which means if they're going to extend him, they're going to have to be more likely to need to extend him if they want to, right? Because you lose a cheap year in there, like you're going to have to make. So I'm interested to see how that all plays out. But he has been, and here's what's crazy: as good as he's been, and we're talking a 1.11 ERA since the start of July, right? He's got, I think, six scoreless starts in that time. And he's given up like 1 run in 2 other starts, one of which was truncated because of the blister thing. But to see him come back from that was very good for the old confidence. But to think that he can still get a lot better, because we're still not seeing the swing and miss, and the overall strikeout numbers that we saw from him in college and the minors. And I understand it's a different level, but those things are coming along. But what I at this point, like, I love watching this dude pitch, to go out there and he just pumps strikes. He's like, I'm not afraid of you. I'm going to throw it. It doesn't matter. You're Mike Trout. You're a future Hall of Famer. Don't care. Going to blow it by you. Going to throw everything at you. Going to try different pitches. I'll work the sinker in later, even though I didn't start throwing it till last year or whatever. And to go, 21 of his first 22 pitches were strikes. And then through 4 innings, he was at 31 strikes and 34 pitches. It's just insane. Like you don't see that at almost any level. So I love it. I just, the fact that then the Cubs have him as a rookie leading the way on the pitching staff. At this point, he's been their best pitcher over the last 2 months. And he's right behind Boyd. To me, I mean, him, Boyd, and Imanaga at this point, to me, that's actually a pretty good playoff rotation. To have Matt Shaw coming into his own and doing big things, to have Michael Busch, who's a little bit older, but still a young guy experience-wise, to have PCA doing the things he's doing and can do. You're starting to see this as a much better balance between veterans and young guys contributing on both sides of the ball. And, and again, Palencia being a young guy there in the closer's role, right? So to take some of these, ostensibly your best starter, your best reliever, or at least second best reliever, and right now with Shaw, your best hitter in the second half, are all young guys, rookies or thereabouts. And so that gives me a lot of faith. And hopefully those are the kind of guys who, we'll see. Playoff time, it's one of 2 things. Either they get a little bit flustered because they've never been there, or they don't know what they don't know, and they're the ones who are actually better for it because they can just go in there and kind of play loose.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing PCA, in the bright lights of the playoffs. There's no doubt about that on network TV, hopefully. When you going back to Horton, though, is, I'm trying to think back to a Cubs prospect that came up through their system and just was as dominant as Horton. It's hard to come up with one.
Mark,
at least for me, I'm thinking back to Pryor and Wood.
Yep. Those are the
to where, I mean, Pryor was a guy who, like, I think there was a lot of hype around him before he even made it to the big leagues. Not to say there wasn't hype around Horton, but I just don't think it was at the same level as Pryor. But just getting to the stage, like, seeing that domination. Like if you think back to a prospect, it's been a long time.
Yeah, I mean and that's really like, and they showed some of the stats. I think on Marquee maybe a couple starts ago to where Horton stacked up very closely with Pryor, and I think Pryor and Wood, those guys both put up much bigger strikeout numbers as I recall right out of the gate. But it was also kind of a different time, right? Despite what there's some dude on Twitter, some pitching guru guy trying to claim that radar guns now are 9 miles an hour faster than they were in like the early 90s, and that if you threw
That's
85
crazy.
back then, it's like throwing 94 now. Like, my dude, that is using outdated radar technology from like the early 70s, and he's trying to say, Nolan Ryan threw harder than Aroldis Chapman. Anyway, that part's, so I don't want to create that, but I'm saying like the game, when we're talking about the late 90s, early 2000s, I mean, we're talking nearly 30 years ago, right? 20 plus definitely years ago. And if you were to look at where the average velocities and just stuff and the way pitching works, it is very different now. But like you said, though, to that point, the Cubs have had very little success in general with homegrown pitchers. I mean, Justin Steele stands out as a really nice example, obviously, but even that, right, that still took a long time, and he's been riddled with injuries the entire time as well. And so, it takes a lot to go back there, but to have a guy who could be the ace, which, Steele has had those flashes of it, if he could be there the whole time, and then hopefully he comes back and is able to do it. But Horton's on a different level from that, though. I mean, it's just,
he is completely different. Like Steele's a surprise, I think, more than anything. And the way he's pitched, and to your point with the injuries, it just doesn't feel like he's a number one guy. I mean, unfortunately for the Cubs, he was their number one guy. And I just think that speaks to like the lack of depth in the Cubs organization more than it does with Steele being a true number one.
Right. And if he's at 2 or 3, and I think, and I don't want to speak for you, but I think it's saying, I've shared a similar sentiment. That's like, he's very, very good, but you want him to be your 2 or maybe even your 3. Sure. Like if he was your 3, then it'd be, then you're really,
and
really
he probably would be. I think Imanaga is that. I mean, if you start to sort through things and kind of look through the next year or two, you're thinking Horton, Imanaga, Steele.
Yeah, especially knowing that he probably won't be back until at least midway through next year, even if things all go well. And then how long does it take to really then get back under you? And I mean, if Boyd continues to do well, then you're sitting there like, holy crap. I mean, Steele could be in the bottom half, you know what I mean? Or the bottom 40%. And that's not even a bad thing, right? Like that's just saying there are other guys who are better, or based on how the matchups go, whatever. But that's like watching Horton, because there's certain, he's maybe not quite at this, and maybe I'll take it too far, but I was listening to the Rewatchables podcast, which is excellent, by the way, especially when you can like layer it in with other pods, listen to them talk about Poltergeist. It's really cool. And I listened to 2 different podcasts, and then I watched Poltergeist last night. It was fun. But they were talking also about sinners, and you talk about Michael B. Jordan, or you talk about Tom Cruise, or Brad Pitt, whatever. There's certain people who, like, you just see them and you're like, yeah, he's got that thing about, like, I don't know what it is. They have it, right, to where people just want to watch him in whatever role it is. And to me, Horton's kind of one of those guys where set the numbers aside, but you just watch. There's something about the way he carries himself on the mound, the way he attacks the zone, just how he does that bulldog mentality. You're like, there's an it factor about him that I think just carries through. That's different from what you see with like a Jacob Mizorowski or whatever, where you're watching some starter throw 102, 103, big lanky dude, and there's a funky look to it. And it's like, wow, that's pretty cool. I like watching this. Horton to me is a different kind of guy where I'm just like, yeah, you know what? I could just watch this dude pitch and I really enjoy it. And then I look up and it's like, holy crap, he threw what? He did 31 for 34 strikes. He had how many scoreless outings? Like the numbers almost just wash away, and it's just like, wow, no, you're just really, really good, and that's fun to see.
Yeah, he's fun to watch because he does those things that you just wouldn't expect a pitcher to do. And let's just hope that Counsell doesn't screw it up
We'll see. We'll
as
see.
we
But
go through the season.
the only thing I'm concerned about is because he did hit. I think he's on the nose now. He went 6 innings
Yeah.
on Saturday, so I believe that's 122.2 combined between Chicago and Iowa, which is the exact same total as his first 2 professional seasons. And he has now pitched more innings this year at the major league level than he has ever pitched at any level of his life, assuming he didn't throw like 100
Yeah.
innings in a high school season, which I certainly hope he didn't because that would be pretty rough. But he only pitched like 50 some innings at Oklahoma combined total
Mhm.
in 1 year because he was hurt the rest of the time. And, he said, so that's where I get concerned because we know the
Yeah.
Cubs, we know other teams in general are concerned about workload. Like, how he's very efficient. That's the thing that's nice to see. It's not like he's going out there and grinding through 110 pitches, but like, how do they get him to October without, and I'm similarly concerned about Matt Boyd, who has thrown more innings this year than he has since 2019. Like there's some musical chairs that are going to have to be kind of shuffled around here over the last few weeks.
Yeah, exactly. Because you definitely, listen, are the Cubs going to win the World Series this year? Probably not. I mean, you get to the playoffs and anything's possible, but at the end of the day, what you really need Horton is for the future, much more than like this year. But you never know. And so I assume they're just going to monitor him and have a lot of conversations with him and make sure he's feeling good. And if he doesn't, then maybe give him some extra rest or we'll see how it works out. It should be interesting down the stretch. So the Cubs play 3 against San Francisco. I know always your favorite when the Cubs are on the West Coast because the game starts at what time does it start at 9:45 your time?
If that's what it was, yeah. I mean, they started at 9:38 Friday and Saturday in Anaheim, and it's like all I can do to make it. It would 10 years ago might not have been a big deal, but now I find myself I'm like good for a while, and then it's like the 7th inning starts rolling around. I'm like, ooh, what happened? So I missed. I saw them go ahead in the 9th on Friday, and then was just out, just done. Like, had to check my phone. Like, did they hold on? So whatever those late night starts are, man, these West
tomorrow
Coast
night
trips
and Wednesday night 9:45 Eastern.
Great.
And then a 3:45 on Thursday. I ran the numbers again. All right. 21 straight games, 7 straight series coming up against sub 500 teams. Honestly, if the Cubs aren't within a game or 2 of the Brewers by the end of that, which would be after the Pittsburgh series on September 17th, I mean, there's something wrong. I mean, the Brewers, maybe the Brewers go on another hot streak. But it feels like it's set up real well.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what you just wonder, like how, like this, and I think these next few weeks tell us a lot about the Cubs. It'll tell us a lot about the Brewers as well because they did have just that incredible run that lasted. You mentioned they had 2 double-digit win streaks. There was a period there where just like they went from 6 games down in the division to 9 games up, right? Like a 15-game swing in 5 or 6 weeks or whatever it was, where they were just playing incredible baseball. They weren't, even when they weren't going on long streaks, they weren't losing multiple games in a row ever. It's like they lose 1 and then win 3 and then lose and win 2. And and that's really what you have to do. And if you keep doing that, keep winning 2 out of 3, 3 out of 4, you're going to wake up in first place. So if the Cubs can do that, and conversely, the Brewers come back down to earth a little bit, and Andrew Vaughn stops being an MVP caliber performer, and Christian Yelich stops finding his form from 5 or 6 years ago or more. Gosh, it was even longer than that. It was like 10 years ago. That dude's been there forever, I feel like. That's crazy. 5 games right now, right? That's not a lot. That's not a huge hill to overcome. It's tough. And again, I'll repeat it. I'll be
particularly given how the schedule is lining up.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. I'll still be surprised if the Cubs are able to actually catch them, just because it does take so much to do that. But conversely, I won't be surprised if they catch them. Well, I don't expect them to catch the Brewers, I guess. I won't be surprised either way, really, because that 5 games doesn't feel like a lot given what we've seen from the Cubs in the past. And then if the Brewers kind of have a balancing act here through the rest of August and part of September to where they sort of find their level, 5 games could go away in a hurry.
Well, and the Cubs are due. And when I say they're due, I mean they're due for a streak. They haven't won. They won 5 games in a row back at the very beginning of the season against the A's, and who else did they play after that? The Padres. They swept the A's, and then they won 2 or 3 from the Padres, but it was 5 games in a row. And since then, they haven't put really any streak together at all. And so it really feels like, I mean, they've just won 3 in a row, and I mean, they've won 6 of their last 7. Let's see, 6 of 7.
Yeah.
8 of 9 of 10. I mean, and so, yeah, 8-2 in their last 10, right? So, I mean, this is the streak, and they've got 3 in a row here going at San Francisco. I mean, if they can go into San Francisco and get a sweep, I know, it's a lot asking for a team to go into San Francisco and sweep them, but it just really feels like this could be a big turnaround. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Don't get ahead of myself.
Even if they go 4-2 over the next 6 games, and I mean the Brewers could go 3-3. They play tonight though, right? They have 7 games in the time the Cubs play 6. So I mean,
yeah, they play against
they go
the Diamondbacks. If they lose tonight, things are going to get interesting.
Yeah, because I mean they could still go 4-3. The Cubs go 4-2. Cubs only gain half a game on them. But if that flips, if the Brewers go 3-4 and the Cubs go 5-1, now your lead's at 2.5. Like that's a series, right? That could change now. So again, right? We'll see. But it's this next week could make things. I would say I'll say this. If it's only a half game swing over the remainder of this week for the Cubs, there's 6 games, the Brewers 7. If it's only a swing of a half game, then I think we see status quo pretty much the rest of the season, and the Brewers will do enough to hold them off. If we see anything,
I agree.
If it's 1.5 in the Cubs' favor, then I feel really, really, because now we're talking 3.5 games with what 4 or 5 weeks left, right? Conversely, if the Cubs fall a little bit flat, and now we're looking at saying 6.5 games back to that, then the Brewers have it easy, right? So anything more than a half game in the Cubs' favor, I'm going to start really feeling optimistic again. But for now, I feel like status quo feels about where it's at.
I'm going to say that over the next 10 games, I'm just making a prediction for the heck of it. The Brewers are going to be 3-7.
Woo.
Brewers go 3-7 against the D-backs, Toronto, and Philly.
Ooh. Okay.
Combined 3-7. And
so what are the Cubs going to do in their 9 games?
8-1.
Oh. So you're saying at the end of 10 games, the Cubs are going to be a half game up in the division. Is what you're saying. 10 games from now.
That's where I'm at.
Okay.
It's aggressive. I know it's aggressive.
That is aggressive. That is quite aggressive. I am not willing to match your aggressiveness in that regard. I think the Cubs. I think definitely I could see them at 6-3 over the next 9. But I think the Brewers will be like 4-5 at 4-6. I guess at worst. But I can see the Brewers being like 5-5. So I could see the Cubs picking up a game and a half. Maybe 2.5. But game and it can't be one game and a half. We'll see. But it's interesting. It's fun. I like where they're at right now. I'm feeling good after a sweep. I think we all are. There are still some underlying things, and I think this would again. I really, really, I need to see Seiya Suzuki given some time off. Not just because he certainly looks like it, but it is very frustrating. I remain incredibly frustrated by Casey starts a game, then sits for 3, then starts 3 games, and then sits for 3.
Casey's
for 4.
got
He
to be
sat
in
for
there
4.
tomorrow.
Yeah, he's outside of he pinch hit in the one game in the blowout, right, and got 2 I think 2 plate appearances in that one, 2 at bats, and he got 1 pinch hit at bat the next game, right? But you've given him, you start him. Well, the whole point, dude, Craig, was to rotate him among several of your struggling dudes and give him, even if it's not giving them a break, like a mental break, which it definitely looks like Suzuki needs. Why do you have him up there to sit? It doesn't make sense. Like, he didn't start the last game against the Brewers. He didn't start at all against the Angels. I don't understand either him being on the bench just in and of itself, and I don't understand not giving Suzuki more of an extended break, and then Happ just maybe a game off every once in a while as well to rotate the dude in. But I'm not getting paid $8 million a year to make those decisions, so I'll just shut up about it for now.
Fair enough. All right. Well, cool. Thanks for joining us, everyone. It's been a good show, and we'll circle back here. When's the Cubs' next off day? They play Tuesday, Wednesday. Let me look. The more traditional box version of the schedule, a little easier to see off days there. The next off day, wow, not for a while. Oh, the 4th. Yeah, September 4th. So what's that, next week?
It feels farther away than what it really is.
It does feel further away. It's after Labor Day coming on up here this coming weekend. And that'll be after. So you've got 3
you
against.
Correctly. I misspoke. It's not farther. Farther is actual distance. Further is theoretical distance. I stand corrected. Continue.
You got 3 against the Giants, 3 against the Rockies, 3 against the Braves, and then a day off. And I think let's definitely plan on having a show then, because I think it'll be a good time for us to check in and see where we are, because that'll let us know after the 9 games whether I with my 8-1 prediction. That means the Cubs are going to have a couple sweeps, obviously.
We'll see.
So
fingers crossed.
That's math. All right. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Have a good one.